What if I told you that all of your preconceived notions about the Roloff family are incorrect? What if the perfectly staged settings, the forced family gatherings, and the camera-ready smiles are all lies? Concealing a fracture so severe that it might destroy Littlepeople, Big World's entire 25-season legacy. The story has been straightforward for months. Zach is up against Matt. The selling of Roloff Farms tore a father and son apart. However, they want you to believe that story. It's a simple the cover article. The true fight, the one taking place behind closed doors and out of sight of TLC's cameras, is what we reveal today. This is the tale of an escalating Cold War. A dispute that is all about one man and one hurtful remark and has nothing to do with the farm. An insider with extensive knowledge of the production has given us an unverified report that has revealed the full dynamics of the Roloff family. It has nothing to do with land. This has to do with loyalty. An ultimatum has resulted from betrayal and a startling criticism of Zach and Tori's parenting. The shocking allegation is that Amy Roloff's husband, Chris Merrick, now forbids Zach and Tori from sharing a room. Zach and Tori have also drawn a line in the sand in retaliation. According to our sources, the fallout is so severe and disastrous that they are now recording their family sequences on entirely different days, requiring the production to accommodate a family that is no longer able to tolerate each other. This goes beyond simple disagreement. There is a schism here. We also have the specifics. We're going to dissect the specific purported remark that Chris made. In addition to connecting the connections with evidence you might have missed on screen and on social media that demonstrates this idea is more than just a theory, we'll disclose the series of fury and ultimatums that followed. It's the Roloff family's terrifying new reality. I need you to do one thing, though, before we reveal the details of this exclusive in-depth inquiry. Prove your desire for the authentic, uncut behind-the-scenes drama of the Roloff family if you're sick of the superficial summaries. Press the like button now. More importantly, enable notifications by clicking subscribe. Finding the tales TLC won't tell you is the mission of our channel, LPBW Update. You don't want to miss the following step. Okay, let's get started. You must first comprehend the bomb in order to comprehend the explosion. We must leave. Go back and look for the flaws in this family's foundation. The appearance of tranquility. The vulnerable situation of Chris Merrick. Chris Merrick was portrayed as the peacemaker when he first arrived in the Roloff's universe. Chris was the steady, laid-back real estate agent who made Amy smile after decades of a turbulent and frequently publicly unpleasant marriage between Matt and Amy. For a while, he was strong because he was the outsider. He had little interest in the long-running family conflicts. Theoretically, he might be a neutral party because he wasn't a Roloff by blood. He performed the role flawlessly on camera. He was the willing, if occasionally uncomfortable, stepfather figure and a helpful husband. He gave Amy some counsel. He attempted to connect with the children. He even made an effort to act as a mediator between Amy and Matt. Do you recall the scenes where Chris and Matt were drinking beer and chatting incoherently? All of that helped to create the image of Chris the peacemaker. However, as devoted watchers who scrutinize every word and every look, we began to see something different. A trend started to take shape. Chris Mark is not merely a spectator. He has strong opinions and a propensity to express them, frequently disguised as simply being truthful or advocating for the position. Consider it. It was Chris who was gently pressuring Amy to sell her stake and move on during the height of the farm discussions between Amy and Matt. He pretended that he wanted to leave the drama behind and start a new life with her. Although that's a legitimate wish, it also suited Matt's objective of gaining complete control of the property's north side. Then, as Matt and Zach were negotiating the sale, Chris was once more the sensible one. He was the one who appeared to imply on camera that Matt's stance was reasonable from a business one and that Zach's expectations could have been excessive. Although Chris was attempting to be practical, Zach and Tori, who were experiencing emotional abuse at the hands of their own father, would have easily seen his practicality as a betrayal. So was picking a side without explicitly stating so. He was more than just Amy's spouse. He actively participated in the political life of the family. He was developing his own relationships and, more significantly, his own opinions after becoming assimilated into the system. This is the important background. Chris wasn't only a careless onlooker who said something awkward out of the blue. He was a man who had been monitoring, evaluating, and developing a very strong and eventually extremely harmful view about his new extended family, according to our exclusive theory. And the explosion of that opinion was imminent. We now reach the crux of the matter. Our source, who wishes to remain anonymous in order to save their livelihood, has given a terrifying story of an off-camera altercation that took place shortly after the farm's public backlash. The report claims that the location was not a large family celebration that was filmed. It was a more private, smaller party. Maybe dinner at the new home of Chris and Amy. The kind of gathering when genuine affection can surface and guards are lowered. In an effort to preserve the appearance of a typical family dynamic, Zach and Tori were present, most likely at Amy's request. As usual, the topic of discussion shifted to the constant stress in the family. Tori and Zach were probably venting, complaining about Matt, the stress of having to pay for their new house in Battleground, Washington, and the emotional toll it was taking on them and eventually their kids. Chris Mark took the initiative at this point. He had been listening in silence, and maybe he thought this was another chance to share his common sense. Maybe he really believed he was doing good. Or, if you adopt a more pessimistic stance, maybe he felt it was time for some tough love since he was sick of hearing the same grievances. Our insider claims that the topic of discussion was the difficulties of raising their children, especially Jackson, who has had multiple surgeries and health scares as a result of his achondroplasia. Tori and Zach have to deal with the ongoing anxiety and high emotional and financial expenses of his medical need. They said that if Matt had been fair, they would have had greater stability and security for their kids, and they were linking this stress to the farm transaction going through. Chris is said to have dropped the bomb at that point. He didn't shout. He didn't yell. Our insider claims that the reason it was so upsetting was because he stated it quietly. The purported remark was something to this effect, and I'm summarizing it using the information we were given. You know, perhaps your children wouldn't have to grow up in such a stressful and uncertain home if you two focused more on a solid future and less on being upset with Matt. Creating a calm atmosphere is the goal of great parenting, not always engaging in pointless conflict. Let's analyze that. Let's examine that statement's blatant cruelty from Zach and Tori's point of view. It discredits their emotions. He's telling them that their justifiable rage at Matt is pointless. Their financial planning is called into doubt. Their decisions are directly criticized by the statement focusing on a stable future, which suggests they are careless with money. It turns their kids into weapons against them. The kill shot is this one. Your children wouldn't have to endure such a stressful home life. He is not merely criticizing their altercation with Matt. He asserts that Jackson, Leia, and Josiah are being intentionally harmed by the way they are treating it. For them, it embodies excellent parenting. The ultimate condescension is the last sentence. Great parenting is about creating a peaceful environment. This man, who has only been in their lives for a few years and has no biological children of his own, is teaching his son, who was raised in the tumultuous environment of Matt and Amy's relationship, and his fiercely protective wife how to be a wonderful dad to Zach and Tori. This was not counsel. The entire foundation of their identities as parents was being attacked. It was a decision made by a man who they probably already thought was not entirely on their side. The ultimatum and the explosion. According to our source, the fallout was nuclear. No conversation took place. There was no argument. According to reports, Tori, who is regarded as the family's mama bear, shut down right away. The discussion was over. The visit was over. According to our source, she and Zach packed up their belongings and departed without saying anything more, leaving behind a defensive Chris and a bewildered Amy. However, it didn't stop there. The anger grew. This was not something that could be dismissed. Zach felt that this betrayal went deeper than anything Matt had done. Matt's activities were motivated by land, business, and a failed father-son relationship. Chris's statement was intimate. It was an assault on his wife and his capacity to give his kids a decent life. Our informant claims that a string of irate phone calls ensued. According to reports, Zach called his mother, Amy, and made it clear. He informed her about Chris's remarks and their extreme harm. This made Amy, in a precarious situation, torn between her spouse and her son. The ultimatum given to the TLC production crew, however, was the last and most important action. By now, Zach and Tori are seasoned reality TV veterans. They are aware of their importance to the show. Zach is the sole child of Amy and Matt that is still on the show after Jeremy and Audrey have left and Molly has been removed. Perhaps the majority of the audience is mostly focused on him, Tori, and their children. They made use of their leverage. Zach and Tori's camp reportedly told production about the event and established a new, non-negotiable condition for their ongoing involvement on Little People, Big World, according to the article. They would no longer shoot with Chris Merrick on the same day. They would carry out their end of the bargain. They would shoot alone, but with Amy. Their own family plots would be filmed. If it was absolutely required for significant events like pumpkin season, they would even reluctantly film scenes with Matt and Karen. But now they had Chris Merrick. Persona non grata. He was a red line. Ladies and gents, this is the reason the program has felt so fragmented and jumbled. It goes beyond simple editing. The producers now have to plan their entire filming calendar around a family feud, which is a logistical nightmare. The proof that connects the dots on the screen. You may argue that this is all based on unverified reports, and you are correct. However, this is where our research takes a further turn. Now, we will introduce circumstantial evidence. The hints that back up our insiders' accusations have been lurking in plain sight on social media and on your television screen. The first piece of evidence is the separated scenes. Watch the final season again. Listen carefully. How often do you see Tori, Zach, Amy, and Chris sitting together in a room? It's just the four of them talking casually. You don't. Amy and Chris are visible. Zach and Tori are visible. Amy is seen going to Zach and Tori's residence by herself. Zach may be visiting the farm to speak with Amy alone, as you can see. Every interaction is handled with care. Amy is serving as the intermediary, the diplomat traveling back and forth between two warring countries. Even during bigger family get-togethers. Pay close attention. Clever camera angles are used. A shot of Chris and Amy conversing with others will be cut with a shot of Zach and Tori speaking to their children. Although they are not in the same scene, they are in the same geographic area. The editors are putting in extra effort to provide the appearance of a family gathering, but the true message is conveyed by the physical distance and body language. They're deliberately avoiding one another. The second piece of evidence is the holiday snubs in social media quiet. The intricacies of social media are crucial, and the Roloffs are experts at posting passive-aggressively. Tori has been sharing events from her family's lives on social media for years. Be mindful of who is and is not included. Tori writes about spending time with her family on recent holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas, but the pictures are noticeably limited to her children, Zach, and possibly her side of the family. Chris is a ghost, but Amy might receive a shout-out or be included in a picture from a different one-on-one visit. He isn't marked. The photos don't include him. Digitally, he is not there. Check out Amy's post as well. She will share photos of her meeting with Zach's family after posting photos of herself with Chris. There is no longer a cheerful blended family photo opportunity. In contrast, group pictures were common a few years ago. The deafening silence on social media is a clear indication of a serious schism that extends beyond Matt's farm drama. The third piece of evidence is the change in Amy's on-screen story. View the most recent season's confessionals from Amy. She is a troubled woman. She frequently discusses the division within the family, but pay close attention to how she puts it. She hardly ever, if at all, frames it as being between Matt and Zach. She uses more general language. She speaks regarding the challenge of bringing everyone together and her wish for her family to be complete. We think she's talking about more than simply her son and her ex-husband. She is bearing the burden of the covert conflict between her son and her present spouse. The farm isn't the only source of the worry and sorrow you see in her eyes. It's the agony of being at the center of a fresh, possibly more intimate family dissolution. She is failing in her attempt to maintain harmony between the two most significant men in her life. This clarifies the extent of her on-screen suffering in a manner that the Matt-Zach conflict by itself just cannot. An opportunity is presented by the great conspiracy motive. Why would Chris risk everything, then? Why would he say anything so disastrous? At this point, we shift our focus from the what to the why. This was more than just a verbal blunder. We think it was the result of an intentional or unconscious power struggle. The new patriarch syndrome is the first theory. Despite his easygoing demeanor, Chris Merrick entered a family that was severely lacking in authority. After his divorce from Amy, Matt Roloff relinquished his daily position as the family's primary patriarch, even though he was still the farm's owner. Chris might have felt compelled to assume that role as Amy's new spouse. For Amy and the rest of the family, he sees himself as a source of stability and wisdom. In this context, his remark to Zach and Tori is more than just an insult. It is a declaration of power. The younger generation is being instructed by the new man of the house on how to handle their affairs. He made a grave mistake in assuming that a son who has his own family and has never considered Chris to be a father figure would take that statement personally. A new patriarch is not what Zach wants. He aspires to be his own family's patriarch. The second theory is that Amy was misguidedly protected. Let's examine a more altruistic but no less destructive motivation. Chris adores Amy. He observes the suffering she endures as a result of the ongoing family turmoil, particularly the arguments with Matt. He probably sits at home and listens to Amy express her annoyance and grief over the strained bonds between her and her kids as well as between the kids themselves. He believes that Zach and Tori's inability to move past the farm problem is the root of all of this suffering. He believes that their resentment of Matt is the poison that is destroying his wife and the entire family system. Therefore, his response was a misdirected attempt to fix the issue rather than an assault. He believed that Amy would at last find peace if he could only persuade Zach and Tori to see the wider picture and move on. It was an awkward, ill-conceived attempt to keep his wife safe that ended in the most dramatic way imaginable. The third theory is the tacit partnership with Matt. Our most explosive theory comes next. What if Chris Marks's remark wasn't merely his personal viewpoint? What if it was a reflection of something he and Matt Roloff both feel? For an ex-husband and a new husband, Chris and Matt's relationship is surprisingly cordial. On camera, they can be seen cooperating on projects, respecting one another's duties, and getting along. Both of them have a more conventional business-first mentality. It's probable that Matt has grumbled about Zach and Tori's apparent entitlement or how they handled the matter in their private chats, expressing his own frustrations with them. And when Chris discovered that he agreed with Matt's assessment, he unintentionally became Matt's spokesperson. Was Chris simply reiterating Matt Roloff's own view when he advised Zach and Tori to quit engaging in unwinnable battles? This would be considered the ultimate betrayal by Zach and Tori. That would imply that Chris is not impartial. Alternatively, it would indicate that Amy has essentially taken the side of the enemy. Reconciliation would become not just challenging but impossible as a result. Matt's interest is properly served by the aftermath. It puts Matt in a stronger position by further separating Zach and Tori from the rest of the family. What this implies for Littlepeople, Big World's future. This schism has enormous ramifications. They go far beyond awkward holiday feasts and wounded sentiments. This puts the show, which has been a mainstay of television for almost 20 years, in danger of going out of business. The foundation of a family-focused reality show is the family's interactions. You no longer have a choice if your main cast members won't be in the same room. Display. Audiences can sense that you are attempting to edit two different shows together. The fakery becomes too clear. The fissures turn into abysses. TLC and the Roloff family are forced to make a decision as a result. The charade goes on with option 1. The logistical nightmare continues. They use Amy as a bridge to film each character independently, then hope the editors can somehow weave a story together. This cannot continue. Viewers will become disinterested in the show as it becomes more and more phony and unauthentic. Choice number 2. Reconciliation is compelled. The network might step in if they see their flagship program circling the drain. To force a dialogue for the benefit of the show, they may sit everyone down and mediate. But is it possible to mend such a profound wound for the cameras? An apology that is forced is not sincere. A different kind of poisonous viewing experience would result from the resentment simmering just beneath the surface. The third option displays fractures. We might witness a spin-off after Littlepeople, Big World as we know it comes to an end. Perhaps a show that is entirely unrelated to the Roloff farm story and concentrates only on Zach, Tori, and their lives in Washington. For TLC, this would be a significant risk, but it might be the only option. The end is option 4. Nobody wants to talk about this one. The last straw might be this fallout on top of the conflict between Matt and Zach. The family may determine that the fame and wealth are no longer worth the ongoing, heartbreaking strife. It's possible that season 25 will be the final time we witness the Roloffs. The deep, sad stillness of a family ripped apart by words that could never be undone would mark the end of the legacy rather than a celebration. That's it. The structure of a family disaster. We have discovered what we think to be the real underlying tale, moving past the straightforward public narrative of a farm conflict. A single hurtful remark sparked a Cold War. The image becomes painfully evident when you consider the avalanche of circumstantial evidence and our insider account. In a moment of extreme poor judgment, Chris Merrick is accused of criticizing the one thing Zach and Tori Roloff will stand up for no matter what: their parenting. It wasn't a landmine he stepped on. He set it off, setting off a series of events that have shattered the family, made his wife Amy a conflicted diplomat, and cast doubt on Littlepeople, Big World's whole future. There is more to the rejection to film together than a small argument. It's a declaration. It is a concretely drawn boundary, and it indicates that the harm caused by Chris's remarks to Zach and Tori might be much more irreversible. Compared to any property dispute, you can sell a farm. You can forget a commercial arrangement. However, many people find it inexcusable when someone attacks their parenting skills. Because it seemed genuine, the Roloff family story has always been an engaging watch. Their pleasures, their hardships, their disputes. They were a larger version of our own. However, the reality has now become so agonizing that it must be concealed, controlled, and altered. We are then left with the question of how long they can maintain the act until everything completely falls apart. That concludes today's in-depth discussion. However, the inquiry is not over yet. What are your thoughts? Do you think our insiders are telling the truth? Have you seen how Chris and the children are separated on screen? In your opinion, what was Chris's motivation? Share your theories with me in the space provided for comments below. I read each and every one. You truly belong to the LPW update community if you have read this far. Ensure that you have enabled notifications and are subscribed, as our upcoming Karen Chandler's covert involvement in all of this will be covered in the report. And you'll want to see it, I promise. Thank you for viewing, and keep in mind that the Roloff's true